Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. I really hope you're all enjoying all of the daily content. So with doing all these videos, I really need lots of stories. I'm currently in search of hospital stories, cop stories, gas station stories, dating app stories, and really just anything under the sun that's a true scary story. If you have any stories that fit those topics, or just your own story, submit it through my website at southerncannibal.com. Now if you're all ready, let's begin. Hi, my name is Haylie, and I was 17 years old at the time of this story. My sister Emily and I went to Walmart around 7 o'clock at night. We really had no reason to be here, just to simply fool around and I guess waste our money. This Walmart wasn't one of the bigger ones. We walked to the back of the store to go get our dog Tucker some treats. When we were looking, we noticed a group of men that seemed to be in their late 20s, early 30s. They were staring at us and pointing. We didn't know what they were saying because they were speaking in Spanish. I did take Spanish class, so I knew a few words. My sister said they were pointing at her chest and smiling, so we both walked to the clothes section. Moments later, I turned around and they were there. The group of men was about 8 people. There were only about 2 of them near us though. One of them made a phone call. While he was talking, he was giving us this really menacing look. Not long after, 4 more men showed up while on the phone. They then hung up simultaneously. Were these people calling each other when they found us? I then told my sister we should probably move again. So we moved to the toy aisle. What a lone grown men would follow us there? I said to my sister. We hid behind the aisles while she spotted one of the men. We then both ran to the auto parts section, which was a few aisles down. There was this camera right above our heads. Emily walked off to go down another aisle. When I was looking up in the camera to take a selfie, I saw a man walking up behind me. Then another man popped from around the corner right on the other side. I was stuck in the aisle. In that moment, I ran past the shorter man whilst calling my sister to find out where she was. We ran to the self-checkout to buy our items and get the hell out of there. Yeah, it was very stupid of us to waste more time while we were still in the store. We made it to our car though when we saw all of the men walk out without any bags and looking around for us. They looked angry. When we drove past them, some of them gave us this uneasy look and the others would smile and say something we didn't know. Because again, they were speaking in Spanish. As we passed them, they seemed to just rush to their car, and thankfully, we didn't end up getting followed by them any further. So yeah, I guess I'm really glad nothing else happened, but it was still a pretty creepy ass experience nonetheless. So this happened a couple of months ago around Christmas time. My high school was having a dress-up week for the last week of school before Christmas break, and we had a pajama day. For a little bit of background, I live in a not-so-safe D1 college town in Texas, where human trafficking and things like that happen all the time. I'm in no way an anxious person or scared of most things that the average person would be scared of, so keep that in mind. Anyways, I'd went with my mom to the Walmart across the street, and we were in our pajama section. I had noticed 2 pairs of shoes on the other side of the aisle for me, but I didn't think anything of it. I, for some reason, really felt the need to leave that section. So I went to the men's section to see if I could find some pajamas in there, since I didn't really feel right in the other section. When I walked past the aisle, beside the other aisle that I had previously been on, I saw 2 men. One was around my height, which is 5'8", and another man who was a few inches taller than me. The taller man looked me in the eye, and a pang of fear hit me in the chest. It felt like something terribly wrong was about to happen. I told my mom, and we rushed to the other aisle a few rows over. And to my horror, they followed us. being oblivious and not thinking they would and that I was overreacting. When I looked up and saw them following us, I was terrified. The tall man was staring right at me and my mom with eyes that just struck terror through every inch of my body. Mind you, I don't really get scared very easily, but I was not going to take this lightly. I told my mom that we needed to get out of there immediately or something bad might happen. She could see how shook up I was, and she took my warning, and we then left in a hurry. As we were walking out, we had noticed the guys were still following us. We then started running, and when we got to our car, they had turned around and went back in the store. I'm a law enforcement student, and my high school and my teacher always asks us what we know that's going on in the real world. And that's when one of my classmates said that there had been a trafficking bust. Although I didn't think much about it then, when I got home and saw the news, the two guys from Walmart were two of many that had been arrested in this sting operation. Although it may not be that scary to others, it was one of the most terrifying things to ever happen to me. Ladies especially, but gentlemen as well, always trust your gut instinct, because if I hadn't, well, I might have just become a victim of something unimaginable. But I'm really glad that didn't happen. So for reference, I'm a 19-year-old girl working in an Indian mall that's currently being built. Let me explain the layout. It used to be a Walmart, and they had built some stores within it. So imagine being around the size of only one story, but still being very big. The mall is connected to an Indian grocery store, and within the wall connecting the two businesses, it had windows going down the wall so you can see into the grocery store, and vice versa. I've been working there for about 5 months now. I'm the janitor for the mall that has restrooms in it that all of the people from the grocery store use. There's a door connecting the two that they come in through, although the mall isn't technically open yet. Throughout my time working there was about 2 or 3 workers from the grocery store that really made me uncomfortable. They were older, and they were in their 40s, I presume. They were also Hispanic, I believe. Well, it all started when they would constantly try to talk to me and say things about me in Spanish. I speak very little Spanish, so I wasn't able to understand them. But by the looks they gave me and the tone they used, I knew it wasn't anything respectful. They'd ask me questions like where I lived, what school I went to, what time I started work, etc. This seems like normal small talk, but the gesture is based on how you feel about the person. Of course, I didn't want to tell them where I lived, so I just said yes, I do go to school. I would try to avoid them as much as possible, but no matter where I was, they would always find me. If I was walking in my car for my break and they were gathering carts in the parking lot, they'd always wave at me very hysterically. I parked in the mall parking lot, which was about 25 to 30 yards away from the grocery store parking lot that they'd be in. If I was cleaning in front of the windows that looked into the grocery store, they'd stop what they were doing to wave and smile at me. All of this probably just seems overly friendly and nothing that really made me worry for my safety. But last week, everything changed. I start my shift at 8 a.m. every morning. Typically there is never anyone there, and occasionally a few construction workers here and there. But this was a weekend, so my car was the only one in the parking lot. The grocery store itself doesn't open up until 9, and no one shows up till about 8:55 to open the place up. I was walking up to the side door of the mall where the lockbox was with a key that I used to enter. The door was in the front, but the door stuck out so that the side entrance was still technically the front. Well, as I approached the door, a large gray truck sped over to me and then stopped behind me, so that in order to see them, I had to fully turn around. The car window opened, and I heard someone say hello in a really thick Spanish accent. I couldn't make out their face exactly, but I knew right away it was one of them because I had seen their car parked in the parking lot during store hours, and the previous day is when they were asking what time I worked and what my hours were like. I just ignored them though and continued into the building. The door is the kind that doesn't slam shut, it just very slowly shuts. So when I walked inside and the door was closing, I heard the car speed off faster than it had approached. Freaked out, I went to the bathrooms where I started my cleaning for the day, and I then called my boyfriend who stayed on FaceTime with me. Admittedly, I was really freaked out, and I was really contemplating on what I should do. This is when from in the bathroom, which is right next to the grocery store, I heard a very loud alarm going off. Immediately, I left the bathroom with my phone to try and figure out what the hell was going on. This is when I realized that the grocery store alarm was going off. Because of the windows, I could see that the entire grocery store was now dark and appeared to be empty. I ran back to the bathroom to grab my jacket and then ran out of the building to my car. I didn't return to work after this incident. I have no idea what the hell those guys were planning or what they were wanting to do to me, but I never returned back to that mall after this incident. So yeah, to those creepy as hell grocery store workers, I really hope I never encounter any of you again. My name is Madeline, and I live in Northern Virginia. Just to add some context, I had started working at a small grocery company that only operates on the East Coast and is based out of New York. I was 17 when I first started working there, and it definitely changed my perception of the world since I got to encounter so many different people. I really enjoyed my time working there, but I had to quit recently due to encounters like the one I'm about to share. I was a supervisor at my job, which meant that I had to work a lot of odd hours, ranging from opening the store at 6 a.m. and also closing the store at 12 a.m. I have always been told that I'm above average looks-wise, and this has brought me a lot of unwanted attention and uncomfortable situations, which I can also submit later on. Though I've had a lot of uncomfortable encounters during my evening shifts, this one in particular occurred around 2 p.m. Since I was a supervisor, when the lines at checkout became longer, I would have to go on the register and ring up people since customers tend to complain when they have to wait in line. I asked a friendly-looking older man, probably in his late 50s to early 60s, if he would mind if I rang him up. His eyes lit up, and he looked a little too excited when answering me. As I began to scan his groceries, I made a little bit of small talk with him. The conversation started off as normal, as he talked about a really expensive wine he was purchasing, and I could tell that he was subtly trying to brag about the $100 bottle of wine that he was buying. He had some other items as well, and I asked him what made the wine so special, and he then asked me if I'd like to find out. I laughed uncomfortably and looked away. He then asked how old I was, and I was 19 at the time, and he then responded back with, "Oh, I've dated girls younger than you. That's not a big deal." At this point, I was uncomfortable, and I wanted to shut down the situation as quickly as possible. I responded back with, "You're probably older than my dad." And he said, "Oh, come on. My friends would be so jealous of me if I brought around a girl like you, Maddie." I told him I didn't really like being called Maddie, and he then placed his hand on my arm and rubbed it up to my shoulder and apologized. I tried looking around for help, and my oblivious boss was standing right behind and didn't even realize what was happening. I don't really like people touching me, and this interaction really spooked me the hell out. But thankfully, after I handed him his receipt, he was on his way. Fast forward a few weeks, and a couple other incidents happened where I was getting harassed at work, which caused me a lot of anxiety, and I began to really dread going into work. I started to look for new jobs, and I went to my LinkedIn profile to make sure it was updated for employers to see. I saw that I had a pending message from a few weeks prior that read, "Hey Madeline, I think it was you that I met today at the grocery store at this location. I'm the goofy guy who bought the wine, and you said that I'm close to your dad's age. Anyway, nice meeting you, and I won't call you Maddie." I then checked the profile, and it was that same man that had made me so uncomfortable from a few weeks ago. I felt so sick after reading his message. The only information this man had of mine was my name and the company I worked for. I felt so unsafe working there. But thankfully, I had put in my 2 weeks earlier on that same day that I read his message. I know this story isn't terribly terrifying, but I don't know how to describe just how uncomfortable I felt going into work for my last few shifts, knowing that someone took the time out of their day to find my professional profile and send me such a creepy-ass message. Stay safe, everyone. Please. It was my 11th birthday, which was on March 2nd, 2012 to be exact. At the time, I was a really big fan of Selena Gomez, and I had wanted one of her CDs for the radio my grandpa had bought me a few months prior. Anyways, my grandpa took my sister and I to Target after he got out of work to buy me the Selena Gomez CD that I'd really been begging for. At this time, the Target in my area had a small food court / snack bar with Pizza Hut in it, which I always got when I went shopping there. My grandpa, sister, and I ordered our miniature pizzas, then sat down at a table in the food court, which happened to be right by the register. After the worker gave us our pizzas, they headed to the back to clean up, I assume, so it was just my grandpa, sister, and I in the food court. Everything was good for about the first 5 to 10 minutes while we were eating, but then I noticed my grandpa, who was sitting across from my sister and I, look behind me, and then move his eyes to the side as if he was watching somebody. My heart started to kind of race because I was confused. I then turned around, and that's when I had seen the most disgusting and creepy looking man that I've ever seen in my life. He was tall, maybe about 6'2" to 6'4", was partially bald, had dirty stained clothes, and he smelled like pee. I'm not even kidding. He was right behind me, going back and forth eyeing my grandpa back. And that's when my grandpa started to yell at the guy, telling him to get away from us. My grandpa then stood up and said,
"If you don't get the fuck away from my granddaughters, I'll make you get away."
And that's when the guy backed up and just stared at us. My sister and I then got up and quickly rushed over to the other side of the table where our grandpa was. We started to walk away, and that's when I then heard the guy say,
"You're both very beautiful. Where are you from? With beauty like that, you must be from like the islands of Fiji or something."
I turned around and he was looking straight at me. Then he pointed and said,
"You pretty girl."
That's when my eyes got wide and my grandpa rushed my sister and I right down the aisle to get away from this guy. As we were walking away, he was following behind us and saying his name along with his address, telling me that I should go and visit him sometime. My grandpa kept a hold of my sister and was making us go down different aisles to try and lose him. When we finally did lose him, we quickly purchased the CD and then went out to the car. When we got into the car, my grandpa was driving out of the parking lot, and we actually saw the guy walking out of the store and looking around like he was looking for us. Or I guess I should say, looking for me. He didn't see us as we were already driving away at this point. But I was completely terrified because that's something I never experienced before. I wish I could say that was the end of it, and that's that. But I had actually seen the guy one more time after that. 2 years later, when I was 13, again, I was with my grandpa, but it was just him and I this time. We were leaving my grandparents' house, and we got in the car to head to the mall. As we were at the end of the street, we had seen that same creepy-ass guy walking down the street. I stared at him wide-eyed, and he made eye contact with me, which made my heart drop in fear. He then immediately started to scream as soon as he had seen me, and he tried to run after the car as my grandpa drove off, but of course, he didn't ever catch up. Later on, when we got back to my grandparents' house, I had found out that there was a care home for mentally insane people right around the street my grandparents lived on at the time, which is where I myself and my grandpa believed that he lived, since the address he gave matched the address of the care home. I'm 19 years old now, and I never saw the guy again after that, and I'm really fucking glad that I didn't.